This is West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Riglinks and Arvy Core 9, where we talk about oil and gas news, projects, and developments that you can sink your teeth into. Here are your hosts, Greg and Arvy. Arvy.
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
How are you? Good.
You?
Good.
Good.
So for everyone that's listening, this is our first episode of West Africa Weekly. Arvy had this kind of idea about having a live session. We've both have been in West Africa for some time, and we thought it'd be great to put on a show here. Try to do it weekly. Will depend on how much content we can get, but so without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-host here, Arvy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So thanks very much for the intro, Greg. By way of introduction, my name is Arvy. I'm a contract specialist in the oil and gas industry. Have been for about 14 years now. Hold a various number of positions. One is the oil and gas editor for the African Leadership Group, as well as board advisor to the Liberian Chamber of Commerce. So I spent a lot of my career and my time running around Africa and the Middle East, working for various majors and clients on oil and gas contracts.
All over the world traveler we're speaking with here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, perks of the job. COVID's put a stop to that, but yeah.
Yeah, so currently you're in London, correct? So you're under another lockdown there.
That's correct, yeah. It's we call this Tier 4, Tier 5, which is similar to what we had in March. So pretty tough time right now for local businesses, but we're managing. We mustn't grumble.
So Tier 4 and Tier 5, explain that one a little bit, Arvy. I'm not familiar with the tiers.
Sure. So the government here have different levels of tiers depending on what area of the concentration of COVID cases have come up. So London originally was in a Tier 3 in December, which means shops are open, your kind of non-essential shops would be open, you can go shopping, and they did that for Christmas. But again, there was a huge spike in cases end of December, beginning of January, which is now what we call Tier 4 and a Tier 5, which means your local area, you're not really allowed to travel unless it's business purposes only. And the only shops that are open are actually the essential shops. So some eateries are open, coffee shops, and some grocery shops, and that's about it, really.
So when they say business or essential, I'm assuming that's anything for local architecture, economy, structure. So not like just having a stroll, right? So.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, funnily enough, it's been strange because, you're permitted for an hour or two to go out and do your local exercises and walk about. But again, you have something called a support bubble, which is your immediate family, and you can only actually socialize with another person, which is outside of your support bubble. Again, it's to minimize the number of cases in the UK. So far, so good. I think it has actually worked. The strategy has worked. The government have implemented, which is good.
Well, that's good. I mean, the lockdown obviously is not good, but I mean, at the end of the day, with same kind of structure we do. We were doing back in Houston. Actually, we still practice that now. Is that we gradually started extending our contact with other people, from about I guess September or so onward, Yeah, we typically don't go outside of that group of people. So that's our friends, coworkers. Typically, coworkers are not inside that bubble. Strangely enough, we don't even associate with coworkers most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's just our close friends,
Yeah. It's as I said before, it's all been a cultural change for all of us, but I think this is perhaps the way forward to getting to back to some sort of normality coming this year. I'm hoping by the summertime, May, June, things get a bit better. But again, we're doing our best here.
Absolutely. So just real quick, we got people coming in from Gabon, India, Germany, Indonesia, Denmark, Nigeria, Tunisia, Houston, Good morning, everybody. Good night, everybody. Or good afternoon, everybody. Where you at? We got Brazil as well. So what we'll do is we'll get into what we call the rundown. So the shows that we do, we typically do a rundown of just kind of a quick overview of what we'll be talking about during the show, and then we'll get kicked off. So let's get it up there. All right. So we'll have just a quick chat about oil prices, and then we'll cover a bit about Mozambique. Our topic that I don't know an entirely whole lot about. I just found it very interesting, which was the ssLNG. We'll also chat a little bit about Trident Energy and an announcement from Egypt this past week, and Liberia's Harper Basin and the marginal fields in Nigeria, which Arvy has lots of experience with. So we can look for a packed show here. All right. So jump right in there with the oil prices. So the looks like our WTI is $50.52, and the Brent is at $54.04. For anybody that keeps up with oil prices and things that's going on in the world, you know that OPEC Plus met let's see, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, convened on Wednesday, and Saudi has agreed to take an additional voluntary cut of 1 million barrels per day, and that'll be throughout February and March. So that's what's driving quite a bit of the price increase at the moment. So a couple of dollars are up on the WTI, and the Brent's also reflecting the same. So not a whole lot more to add to that. It seems the price is also going to reflect a bit of the same kind of sentiment from last week from the newly announced lockdowns, which Arvy's sitting inside of one at the moment. And so hopefully that'll be over pretty quick, and the world can get back to normal. So on the news side of things, it's not really news, but I mean it is news. But obviously, kind of the highest kind of focal point. I mean, maybe highest is probably a bit overzealous, but obviously Mozambique's been in the news a lot. And one of the things that announcements that were made last week was the one of the LNG construction awards from Daewoo. So it was $455 million. But just some background: the Mozambique LNG project started with a discovery off of a vast quantity of natural gas off the coast of northern Mozambique in 2010 by Anadarko, leading up to a $20 billion final investment decision in 2019. In 2019, Anadarko's interest was purchased by Total, and now they're taking care of the delivery of the rest of the project. So the project was on track to deliver LNG in 2024. I mean, it's not, they were already starting to do some delivery, but this is kind of the longer part of the construction. What was it, Arvy? How many trains, sorry?
I think there was supposed to be preliminary stages. There were meant to be 5, and then they increased to 7. And this was of news as of this last year, February.
Okay, so they're saying I think it's going to be another 33 months here or so to complete this construction phase at DSME. But I had the opportunity to spend quite a long period of time in DSME whenever we were building the ships that I'm currently working with now. But it's a lot of hardworking people there, and I'm glad to see DSME picking up some more work, especially for long-term projects. When we talk about Mozambique, Harvey, we can't pass up the fact that there's seems to always be some kind of something in the news, whether it's about disruptions, whether it's some kind of violence taking place. And I mean, one of the things that I ran across while I was looking and doing some, some researching about Mozambique before we came on to do the show was this article from Al Jazeera. It was back in February of 2020, and they reported that some of the work that was taking place there, or was going to be taking place there, was going to be displacing like 550 families, which doesn't seem like a whole lot when you think about it. But 550 families being displaced is that's when they talk about livelihoods and local communities and how they face the violence and being displaced and not being able to find farmland, or being neighboring farmlands where they dispute with someone else about the farmland. So there's a lot of different kind of contrast that's taking place in Mozambique. So although, I say, it doesn't directly tie back to foreign companies, they say there's anger about the transparency from the foreign companies. So what's your thoughts there?
I think we've got to look at the primary stages of any development when any international investment is conducted in country. And I think it's always easy to read these articles and take the opinion that, it's causing some sort of disruptance. What's really important to ascertain is the fact that when any international investment is conducted, there is a local content quota, legislation, and local labour laws that all engineering companies, contractors, and subcontractors, including local partners, must adhere to. So, you won't ever see, an international oil company going into a remote region of Africa or a particular country and stating that, you must move out or you must mobilize to another region because we need to start work here. It's not something that's really heard of. And because we have to be very, careful when we read these articles, because sometimes it's always written from a very subjective point of view. And
right.
And this is the issue. And I think us being in industry, and you know what it's like, there's a number of, contract administration we have to go through, including due diligence and, going through client contracts, that we really understand, okay, if I'm going to put 50 boots on the ground, where are they going to stay? What are the logistics? What is the local terrain like? There's studies that are conducted. There's pilot studies that are conducted, there's feasibility studies. So I think from a contracts perspective, CSR is very critical that we always implement when we're putting together any large contract. Corporate social responsibility, is a definition. Local content quota, which is usually a flow down of the local legislation and the local government. So, it's I mean, when I read articles like this, I can understand the issues, but I also understand how international investment companies come in and they actually put a good foothold in the country as well. Because we're draft the contract. So I'm very certain that this is happening, purely because it's a flow down from the actual, usually the prime contract the government have and the majors sign into. So again, I have my opinions about this, but I'm very confident with a number of majors that I've certainly worked for. When we implement local content models in country, they're done very well.
Well, you were working in Area 4, right?
Correct.
And you were working with the LNG developments and local content provision. So if anybody should know how the things were going then, it would be you. So
yeah. And I think, I mean, as I said before, that you've got to be. I mean, we're operational people, so we know how it works on the ground, and we also know that the flow down of any contractual obligation is very important for us when we're working, in a foreign land.
Exactly. I mean, I guess my kind of my comment here, it's probably more an opinion than it is a comment. And I usually get in trouble when I start talking about opinions, but I mean, Number one, I'm not a news correspondent, so I can only speak from what we do as far as being a foreign traveler, an expat going into a country and working with the personnel and building those relationships. But again, I'm not a news correspondent, but although Al Jazeera is usually non-biased, so I don't mind Al Jazeera's media and the things that they put out because they actually do really good work. But I think some info here and this one here I kind of ran across, but I think it's a bit one-sided. But to allow for people to enter the country, as foreign correspondents, they obviously want to tell about what's happening in the country, and so to be able to do that, they cannot say that it's the government's fault. So they want to be able to come back into the country. So there's a thing there. There's a thing there called do not return. There's a stamp in your passport that you get sometimes that if people don't want you to come back, you get these kind of things. So although you don't want to kind of stir up a bit of trouble there, and B, you won't be welcome back into the country. So I can understand the frustration from the kind of local people about the foreign transparency or foreign company transparency. But as you said, these plans are typically created between the foreign companies and the government.
Correct.
And so it's the responsibility of the government to have the transparency.
Right.
Now, we help do everything else. The foreign investment or the foreign companies, we help do everything else, whatever they need to get the structure in place. But they are the ones that have to reach out and show the plan to their people. So,
absolutely, and a lot of the time, we're guided by local governments for the implementation of these contract objectives. So we're guided by them. They usually give us a local content quota or local labor law legislation that is then put into contract. So really, we're guided by what the quotas are and the provisions of those quotas as well, and the hiring of local labor force, the training, the management. So again, it's actually a flow down from the government. So we're very much guided by local government as well.
So we have a comment here from Emmanuel. I'm going to put this up here. Unfortunately, if you're dealing with a rogue government only interested in what they can make privately from deals of such magnitude, may decide to look the other way if the international businesses investing in their country decides to cut corners. Although I'm not going to disagree with you, Emmanuel, but I think the days of hiding business deals are almost over. The transparency is a lot heavier now. It's a lot more, and it's a lot more in the public. And I mean, that is all come our way through social media and the news. So there's no way you can get away from it. None.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And, just to reiterate your statement there, I absolutely agree. Now is not the time to be conducting any sort of nonsense business. By the time it'll be on Instagram and Twitter, and the whole world about it. So we're in the media age right now. So people are I think you're right. I mean, I've certainly noticed when we do due diligence that, it's conducted in a different way. I know that a number of companies now, actually, no, it was for your visa application. They actually ask you your Twitter handling, your name of your Twitter handle. Do you have any Instagram? What's your name on Instagram? So they ask you all these social media questions because they know that the level of influence this can have globally.
I mean, I can't stress enough that there's always going to be someone that has an agenda somewhere, and it is when you come across these agendas, and obviously I'm speaking to Emmanuel and Jose, but I think I think you have to maintain your kind of stand on things. It's whenever you run across situations like that. I mean, I previously was in in another situation where there was some tax issues came up before, and instead of dodging it, we went head into it. It's not about it's not about what you're penalized with. It's about if you ever want to come back and work there again. So if you ever want to come back and work there again, you need to have a very clean slate whenever you're leaving the country. And if you're, and if you have bad businesses like that, typically you don't get welcomed back.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
Thank you for the questions, Emmanuel. I mean your statement, and as well as Jose. I think this is the reason that we wanted to put this show together, was to kind of put a different light on things, and we appreciate your participation. But we did say that there was I think Total did do some personnel reduction here last week as well. I think they were having some disruptions there, and they moved out some of their people. So, LinkedIn user, must be Kristen. So one question: why oil prices are not increasing? Due to this issue, many oil workers are bound to have. Okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, and this is probably not Kristen, but yeah. So let me. I'll answer that one real quick. I mean, your oil prices. It depends on what segment of the market you're in. If you're upstream or downstream, there's a difference in kind of where you would be at as far as oil prices are concerned. So if you're, as well as what kind of company you're working for, are you working for an international oil company? Are you working for a national oil company? Are you working for a drilling contractor? Are you working for a service provider? So your statement is real broad, but yes, I mean, it's all on supply and demand, depending on where you are. All right. Arvy, you ready to talk about some ssLNG? Did you check it out?
I did, absolutely. I think, I'm really quite impressed with the way the LNG market has been in all the papers and the press right now. I've been speaking with a number of vessel operators and vessel owners, actually, and there's a huge demand for FSRU construction, as well as small parcels of LNG within the African continent and the business flow. I know that PwC wrote a very good paper last year about the development and the scope, and including the financing structure for anybody interested in small-scale LNG projects. Really very interesting. I know that, look, for us working in the region, we know that Mozambique is definitely your prime spot for LNG activity right now. But again, majority-wise, when we're talking about construction and development and actual operational work, a lot of the vessel operators, including some engineering firms, actually are very keen on exploring small-scale LNG, just on the basis that, it's commercially viable. It's definitely attractive right now with the oil price being what it is. And also, Qatar, we're talking about 10 to 12 years now. Qatar has dominated this space. And now you've got, the US being third in industry right now for LNG. So I'm thinking that, there's a lot of hotspots in Africa that, a lot of vessel operators, including the engineering firms, that are looking at smaller scale type projects. I've been assisting on a number of RFPs, so I do know there's a lot of investment, especially financing, available for those kind of projects.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a transition. LNG is a transition energy component. So, the one thing here was I kind of noticed about this technology in particular, especially with West Africa being the kind of region we're speaking about. But as with any service, the main infrastructure, other than the actual product itself, is the supply chain of that product. So, and the oil and gas kind of supply chain, the reason that it's profitable is because it's plenty. There's plenty of it. So there's plenty of people that know how to do it. There's plenty of people that that can get products moving. But in these new emerging technologies, how some of the supply chains being able to kind of cope with the demand. I mean, obviously it has to do with profits, but if it's not profitability, if it's not profitable, sorry, they simply won't be part of it. So I mean, this kind of what makes oil and gas slightly different than small scale oil LNG. But with some of the new technologies that's coming along, I think the challenge is getting people to transition to a line of work. So
yeah, absolutely. But I also think what's really helped, like you stated, the technology and the advancement of technology. We do know that artificial intelligence, fintech, even Bitcoin has influenced the way LNG, we do our business in the energy sector. I mean, I've seen some great platforms being set up for on the trading side. So I do know that, again, it's technology will definitely in the next 3 to 5 years, I think, influence the way we even price LNG as well.
for sure, I guess in the remote areas and the remote regions of West Africa, it's getting the part from A to B to C and then getting it installed is the big hurdle. I mean, you've been there before. Setting up supply chain in some of these countries that you start operations in it's you go in there, you do your due diligence, you look at your vendors. If you don't have any vendors, then you go and have meetings about getting vendors set up. So it's it's almost like being in the Wild West and just starting everything from scratch. But what's good though is there's a lot of very smart people in West Africa and a lot of countries that do have supply chain and been having supply chain in there since the 60s. You take Panalpina, for example, and a lot of those, they've been in every country in West Africa. So I mean, it's good to reach out and find a resource that can help you get set up right. That's the thing. But
Yeah.
now, whenever I was we'll obviously talk about Liberia here in just a little while. But
Sure.
I was in Liberia in 2011, working for let's see, who was it at the time? It was Anadarko, and we were in Monrovia. So I found Liberia challenging. All of our supply chain and gear was coming out of Takoradi. So there was nothing locally. I think it was the first well or first exploration well that had been drilled there since like 1985. So it was quite challenging getting gear in and out. The cruise as well, not the cruise, but the supply vessels where it was a 6-day turnaround from Takoradi back to Liberia. So it was quite a challenge for us.
Sure. I think what's really important to note about Liberia is its demographics and its positioning as well. I've been involved in the Harper Basin bid round. We had so the bid round has actually been extended to the middle of this year due to COVID. So there are a number of opportunities for operators and small E&P companies to get involved. And I think what's really which was really quite alarming for me to see, is that when the bid round was actually advertised and the PR was conducted, you had a lot of new entries. So you had a lot of small and mid-tier companies being formed in Europe to support the engineering services and the feed work, which I think for a country like Liberia that's relatively small was really quite an attractive proposal to review, because you could see that E&P companies were actually interested in the bid round, interested in submitting contracts. So I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of work by the end of this year that comes out of that region. I'm talking from a contractor's perspective. So, again, I'm the energy advisor to the Liberian Chamber. So we look at things of how we can actually implement unilateral and bilateral trade, and also look at companies, global companies, as well as from the UK, that can actually, set up shop for us in country as well in Liberia.
Sure.
And that's very important for us because, again, the local content agenda is always number one and key criteria for us. So, again, I'm really looking forward to that at the end of the year, actually, I'm thinking, yeah.
So Maxine, welcome to thanks for stopping by. If anyone doesn't know Maxine, she works for another company called Data Gumbo, which we've done some stuff with before in the past, and she's also a fellow nomad. So thanks for leaving this comment. She says Amador Toro is a company that helps companies get started in new countries for supply chain processing. Thanks for the comment, Maxine.
Thank you.
She's also dropped a note here into the or a link here into the comments, so you can go check out.
Good.
All right. So yeah, I think as these technologies, as the world gets smarter and things, one thing that really hurts a lot of businesses in remote areas is the ability to have high-speed data transfer, and so that's always going to be an issue. Hence the reason there was a lot of people going in and building roads in different parts of West Africa, because you needed support. You needed to get vehicles from one place to the other. So it's the same thing with communications now. It's just swapped for the other one. So
Absolutely, yeah. And also, as well as like you've stated, we're getting smarter. Our Androids and our iPhones are getting smarter. And saying that, I've traveled quite a lot in West Africa, and the data packages are very expensive.
absolutely.
Well, if you're on a local salary, it's really quite costly. I mean, I was running out of data every 3 to 5 days. So, yeah, I can see the struggles.
I am the exact same way. I mean, same way whenever I was worked in Myanmar, was the same thing. So I was going through these scratch cards with the
Right. Yeah.
serial numbers on the back of them. I was going through a stack of those a week, like that thick, with these cards, whenever we were on shore. So it doesn't, it's just enough to make a local phone call. That's about it.
Yeah, that's right. And you're right. And we've got a UK operator called Vodafone, and they actually have a setup in Ghana. So even their international package, if I set it up from London, it's so expensive. My bill goes into the hundreds, and it's supposed to be competitively priced, but I don't think it is.
It doesn't sound competitive.
Yeah, that is true. I should have read the terms and conditions, Greg.
Yes. It sounds like a robbery.
Yeah. True, right.
So another couple announcements this week was Trident Energy. They look like I think that's an EG. Yeah. So they're looking to drill another additional 3 wells in Block G off the coast, but this is, of course, comes behind the decision from the Ministry of Hydrocarbons to set high foreign capital investment activity for 2021. So, do you deal much with EG, Arvy?
I don't actually. No, I've done conducted some work in Morocco, but not that part. No, I'll be interested to see what comes out for Trident. So let's see.
Well, it looks like they're going to be relatively short wells, but 33 days each to complete.
Okay.
And they did some 4D seismic back in 2020, so obviously they've got something there. But it looks like Noble Energy will be doing some refurbishment on the Asing floating production storage and offloading facility there for a few days. So it looks like a little bit of stuff going on. It also, let's see, as of October 2020, total crude production in the country stood at 35 million barrels. So translating to an average daily production of 115,250 barrels per day. So, yeah, I mean, there's always been interest in EG, and going back as far as I can remember starting this business, there's been interest, but that's good. I like to see these announcements come up like this, especially in countries that are developing new energy sources. So.
Absolutely. And especially when you look at the volume of investment going in as well, I think, especially for us operating, it gives you that sense of confidence that the industry is going to come back up and there is development in industry. So I always look at, I'm always interested in the commercial aspect and the kind of money that's been invested as well. So it fills me up with great confidence anyway.
I 100% agree. Jose, since you mentioned investing in a helicopter company, transport company, you won't believe that there's a couple of startups now. I think one is actually in Angola, is a Because of the how congested that the local highways are, there's a startup company now doing A to B helicopter transport locally for people. So, and I mean, it's an app that you download, and all you need to do is grab a seat on the helicopter in Angola now. Now, I mean, it's a startup company. I think it's about 4 or 5 months into the startup, but it's kind of like an Uber with helicopter seats in Angola.
Yeah, that's, as I said before, that's fantastic. I love,
Wow.
it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, look at it. I mean,
Yes.
it's like if I'm coming to meet you for a coffee, be like, how are you getting there, Arvy? Well, I'm just about to grab a helicopter. I'll be seeing you in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But again, this is what technology has done for us. It's really quite advancing some remote regions. But yeah, I'm trying to get out to Angola March, April time. So I think I'm going to try that service. Definitely.
Hey, I ran across the guy on LinkedIn. He sent me a connection request, and so I kind of went through and looked at the app, and of course, the app is kind of it's a bit boxy, but they've put a lot of promotion and advertising behind it. And I mean, it's again the service. Whenever you're speaking about data and you're speaking about the service that you're being provided in some of these countries, like the clientele that they're working with is going to be like me and you. Unfortunately, like the local personnel are not going to be taking a helicopter. They're going to sit in traffic. So I mean, that's who they're after. They're after, some of the expats and some of the foreign investments in it. But again, like I know that whenever you're in countries like this, typically you don't take any kind of transportation that hasn't been blessed by your company.
Correct.
So you have your drivers, you have vehicles, everything's already set up for you, and until these guys can crack the door into that secret sauce and get in there and say, hey, you got, because I'd be quite honest, and I'll tell anybody right now, I spent 4.5, 5 years in the Congo, and I wished I could have took a helicopter to my business meetings, because it used to take us anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour in traffic.
Yeah.
And that's one way.
Yeah.
And then obviously coming back same, but it was there's just only so much road. And you can, anybody that's ever worked in West Africa, yourself included, the time that I spent in the Ivory Coast and Abidjan I'd never seen so many vehicles in my life. That was the most vehicles I'd ever seen. Even more vehicles there than I've seen, anywhere. It was just amazing. But it's a good concept. I hope it, no pun intended, takes off.
Yeah, that was a good pun. I like that one. But like you rightfully said, I mean, these kind of services are commercially very attractive to the expat. They're kind of foreign working in country, and rightfully so. You'll find that a lot of these startup companies will be approached by the majors and the IOCs as well for their mobilization planning. So I think probably gauge that there is a business demand. So I'm hoping it goes really well, and I'm sure I'm sure they're doing very well, in fact. So I'm looking forward to going to Angola anyway. Let's see.
Yeah, you're right, Jose. You can get in the bar there and they can say, sir, your designated helicopter is on the roof. I totally agree. Me, man, it's the way to go, 100%. But so it's not directly related to West Africa, but it is business related for especially northern and the MENA region. But just wanted to bring up the another announcement that was made this week was the $1 billion worth of new exploration agreements that Egypt has signed with ExxonMobil and Chevron, or been six international companies and local companies, but including ExxonMobil and Chevron, of course, two of the biggest IOCs in the world. So again, that's another. When we speak about Egypt, we think Egypt is a million years old, but it's still a developing energy country. So they're steadily working between different regions, trying to sign agreements with pipelines and transportation, as well as still a very young offshore kind of field there. Some of their fields are still real young.
Sure.
Some of them, they started in the 50s and 60s on some of these, but deep water is still pretty much unexplored in the Mediterranean. So there's a lot of these companies coming in there. I'm here in 2022. A lot of companies are coming in to do some work there, but
Yeah,
that's good for the people on that side of the continent.
absolutely. You're right. North Africa is definitely going to be booming. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Harper Basin in Liberia. What about the marginal fields in Nigeria?
Well, Nigeria is always going to be a hotspot for me because of the demographics and the actual it being, Africa's star player in oil and gas activities. And I think the level of interest that I certainly was aware of working from London into Nigeria was when the bid round was actually announced. And I think it took about less than a week for there to, I mean, I think the world went crazy. As soon as the bid round was released, everyone said, okay, let's put our money and our financing and our E&P guys together and let's go and bid for these blocks. And I think what ends up happening when you bid for marginal fields, you're very much dependent upon on what the government actually give you and the information that is actually flowed down. So I think for me, I've been involved with 3 companies that have put in some application for the bid round, and I think 2 of them may be very successful. So it's been ongoing for longer than 12 months now. And Nigeria, again, has got a very strong, stable legal structure, stability in the local content structure as well. Lots of development going on from the refinery capacity as well. You've got companies like Walter Smith and Mr. Dangote doing some great build and infrastructure for the region as well. So I'm thinking that Nigeria for me is definitely, I've been working in Nigeria for about three and a half years. So I definitely see that as my number one hotspot, aligned with Liberia for the next major oil and gas work. That's just personally me working because I get a lot of queries as to, Arvy, could you help us with this contract, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that, the structure of the country always influences and helps the level of business, international investment coming in. So I'm very happy that the 2 of the contracts that I've certainly worked on look promising to be awarded this contract, but we don't really know, anything at this stage can sway the contract, so we don't know.
Sure. Arvy in there slinging the ink on it.
No, I'm trying to sling something.
Well, that's us. End of episode 1 there, Arvy. How do you think things went?
I'm really quite enjoying the general chit chat. Actually, I've got so much on my mind. I wish we could keep going, but yeah, maybe for our next series, our next show, we'll definitely have a lot more to discuss. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of questions to answer after this as well. So. Yeah.
I mean, what we'll do is we'll tag you in there, and you can jump in here to these few hundred comments that we got that come up, and feel free to answer all of those. It'd be great. Let's see, what do we got here? We got before we move here, I think Alyssa has a question here. How are things progressing with the Dangote refinery?
I think from my experience and my knowledge of what's going on I think it's progressing very well. A lot of the engineering has been conducted by an Indian firm. I know that he's contracted a lot of the services out to an Indian company. So I think he's aligned with his key objectives for the next 18 months, I believe. So I think the planning is going very well. And, it's a showpiece what he's done to build that refinery. So for me, when we look at Nigeria in particular, as I said, because that's where I've been working for the last couple of years, I'm always very proud to make a statement like that, because it's a local billionaire. He's a local guy, and you look at the infrastructure somebody like that has built, and I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth announcing because it's major. It's a really big deal.
Yeah, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
especially when it's local. Yeah, putting it back. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, everyone, we're going to close up for now. It's been fantastic. I hate that it's over so soon.
Absolutely.
I mean, Ryan and I typically have to turn the lights out before it's over with. But what we'll do is everyone, if you have any more questions, you can reach out to Arvy. She is on LinkedIn and Instagram, and I think you're all over the place. I mean,
Yeah.
she has her own website as well, which is an amazing website. I'm actually quite jealous of your website.
Are you?
Here's
Well,
our website right here above our head.
The guys that helped me with it are fantastic. There's a group of guys out in London, in fact, that do a lot of the trading platform websites. So they have a lot of knowledge about oil and gas and the industry. So they helped me build it. So yeah, I'm really super pleased with it as well.
Yeah, she's got a lot of cool transitions on her website. There's a lot of she's done quite a bit of presentations and public speaking, and so yeah, go check her out. And as well as come back and next week for our next show. Get in line, RSVP.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Greg. See you later.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Thank you. You've been watching West Africa Weekly, a live series brought to you by Riglinks and Arvy Core Nahar. Your hosts have been Greg and Arvy. For sponsorship opportunities, send us an email at info@riglinks.com. Tune in next Thursday at 8 a.m. CST for another live episode.